African fashion, it's bold, beautiful, and just out of this world, and also out of reach for many. But why is something that is born of us so out of reach for many of us? Let's break it down. Welcome to SegoB Breaks It Down, where we break it down one crazy thing at a time. And I am, of course, SegoB. Walk into a designer store. You are probably going to walk out with nothing. Most designers price their garments in their thousands of rands, nairas, and cedis. But why is that? Designers face a number of challenges. One would be production scale. So African designers do not make or do not have the capacity to make 500 garments at once. So most of the garments that they make are either made to order or they are made in smaller quantities, and therefore they cannot cut the cost of making that specific garment. The second thing is, with the collapse of the African textile industry, most designers have to import Ankara, beads, zips, all of these items from countries like China, India, and they have to incur shipping costs as well as your exchange rates and import duties. Also, African tailors, beaders, and pattern makers deserve a living wage. They deserve to earn a living wage. And mostly in fashion, the biggest cost is your labor cost. There's also no or little access to economics of scale. So they cannot, like your H&Ms and your Zaras, create a t-shirt for only 80 rands. It's going to cost more. Also, operational costs are unforgiving. Paying for studio space, equipment, tags, packaging, all of these things that you still need to go out there to countries like China to import. Fashion is an experience. It's not just about the garment. African fashion isn't just expensive, it's marketed in a way that is alienating. You would ask yourself, who is this really for? Is this for us as African people? Designers often target international buyers. We're talking people from the US, the UK, and also other European Union countries who romanticize African culture and have stronger currencies, which then would make that 3,000 rand dress hella affordable for them. Also, African collections are tailored also to meet or suit the collections are tailored to fit the fashion standards of an international fashion weeks. More muted, understated palettes, some things that move away from our bright, bold African fashion language. Local consumers may feel excluded by African fashion due to the price of African fashions and styles that don't really match their lifestyle. English heavy campaigns. Most stores belonging to African designers are actually in the high-end malls. We are talking in your Sandton cities, your Rosebanks, your malls of Africa, and markets that are not easily accessible. Those dynamics are what also impact how people see African fashion. A lot of the African prints aren't even African. They're made in China, and they are made cheaper, faster, and they are everywhere. Chinese factories produce African prints en masse at high speeds, and they completely flood the African market with inauthentic African fabrics, for lack of a better word, and making those textile creators in the continent have a tough time competing because their fabrics are everywhere and they are far more affordable than what they sell. Cheaper, readily available fabrics come in and they outrun your handmade tie-dye fabrics, your kente and mud cloth, and it makes it difficult for those creators of those authentic fabrics to really keep up with demand. Local textile factories cannot meet the demand because they don't have the fancy machinery that can pull out a couple of thousand meters of printed fabric in a short space of time, and they cannot meet also the African designers' demand to create garments, and the African designers are also on a time crunch, so they also rely on those imported fabrics to keep themselves afloat. Honestly, this also has an underlying effect in the skill of fabric making, the continuation or the apprenticeship of making those fabrics. That skill is being lost slowly but surely. The skill of making fabrics has been lost due to low demand, low wages, and low investment in the preservation of this beautiful craft. Africa once had a very thriving textile industries. Liberalization, corruption, and globalization has wiped the industry off the map. The issues that I'm having today. So one of the things that crushed the industry is structural adjustment programs. In the 80s and 90s, African countries were pressured to remove trade restrictions. This made it so much easier for cheap imports to undercut local trade. Another thing that happened is Western countries started exporting their used clothing to African countries, and most Africans preferred that because they would then get that high quality clothing at a cheaper rate, which also killed the African market. Governments started selling off textile factories to private investors who then either stripped those factories of their machinery and assets, or they failed to modernize, which then led to the ultimate demise of the textile market in Africa. Unlike China and India, Africa failed to protect its growing industries. So skills, machines, jobs were wiped out in one generation. Now, many African designers are not trying to get rich. I can tell you that much for free. They are just trying to survive. But it's hard to scale in a broken system. What about discounts? Designers have to buy their raw materials, the fabrics, the zips, the tags, everything at retail cost, which makes it very expensive to even start in the first place. So you find that because of the cost of having a fashion line or having a brand, you find that designers are a one-man operation. They handle social media, they sew, they cut, they handle client relations, they do the financing. don't recommend that you do that yourself. Creative entrepreneurs struggle to secure funding that you would get normally if you were in tech or agriculture. African economies typically African economies typically have a very small middle class. The super wealthy buy international brands. The lower middle class cannot afford to wear designer brands. So there isn't that much cushion in the middle to support these designers. We are also competing with a monster. Fast fashion is trendy, it is now, it is everywhere, which makes it even harder for African designers. More challenges that fast fashion creates is that consumers start comparing unfairly. So we compare a 1,500 Rand hand-stitched dress to a dress that you would find at Mr. Price for 299 rands, even though the quality, the ethics, and how those two garments were made are completely different. Fast fashion delivers thousands of SKUs in a matter of days, whereas a small designer would take weeks to fulfill an order. African fashion is inherently slow and ethical, and it lacks the funding and the PR to market this as an advantage. It's about people earning a good wage. It's about making that really high quality. The other problem is fast fashion ends up as waste. Africa has become a dumping ground for unsold inventory in places like Accra's Kantamanto. I hope I pronounced that correctly. The Kantamanto market, where it is flooded, guys. Like dustbin ya diaparo.
How did some beaches in Accra, Ghana get from this to this? To find out what was going on, I went to Ghana's coastal capital with a team of investigators from Greenpeace Africa, and what we found was beyond shocking. The key questions we asked ourselves were how much clothing was arriving here, why was so much of it being dumped in rivers and beaches, and who was responsible. We knew that a shocking 15 million secondhand items of clothing arrive in Ghana every week. So in the last year, we visited Kantamanto, where tons of secondhand clothes arrive every day, and we found that up to 500,000 items of clothing waste from the market end up in open spaces and informal dump sites every single week. Market sellers buy bales of internationally imported clothes, most of which are of poor quality.
For most people, they've invested all of their life savings into this business, and it's sad that they get to buy a bill, open the bill, and most of the things in there are things they can't sell.
They normally pay the bills, and the bad ones many than the good ones. The bad ones are many.
We want better ones. All these ones are baller. Yeah. That's what we say here. Yeah. It's not good.
We also visited informal dump sites, climbing mountains of textile waste, where we collected samples and performed infrared testing on them to see what these clothes were mainly made of. And, surprise, surprise, they are predominantly made of plastic. Our investigation found that some of these clothes are also burned as fuel to heat water in public wash houses, leading to levels of air pollution far exceeding European air guide values by almost 200 times. We can't stand by and let this injustice continue. But how do we solve this? The Ghanaian government must ban the import of textile dead waste or useless clothing from the global north immediately. Furthermore, we must all call for mechanisms to make polluters and cloth companies pay for the environmental and health damage they cause. So share this video and expose the destruction being caused by the fast fashion and clothing industries. Africa is not your dumpster.
they are selling everything. Because remember, with fast fashion, it is things that are trendy now. As soon as the trends are gone, nobody's buying them. These things are put in containers and shipped to us in big shipping containers, and they become landfill. It just becomes a landfill site. The other issue is the psychology of consumers. We've been taught to see our fashion as less than, even when it is not, even when the quality is up there, even when the ethics are up there. But because it is African, we tend to look down on such. A person would rather spend a large amount of money on a Gucci t-shirt when they could just buy a Maxhosa.
It happened to me. Like last week, Wednesday, on a holiday, I went to Sandton City for the first time in about a year and a half. And because people is like, you must go and see this diamond walk thing. It's like literally, it's pumping. There's like queues. I'm like, no, there's nothing like that. And I went there. I like literally around 11, 12, there was no queues. And I started doing like, other stores, came back. By the time I came back, there was already queues outside. And I'm like, what madness is this? Number one, every product that is in these luxury stores is not made in South Africa. It's made somewhere in the world. I'm not going to be mentioning names, but made somewhere in the world. Yeah. We are the first one as Black people to go and support. The only people that get I'm not sure even it's a percentage of this money, is the people that are working there. Yes. Immediately you swipe your card or give them the cash. That money leaves the country. Yeah. And what you are saying David Tlale, Maxhosa, Tebe Magugu, Tula Cindy, and many other brands, Richie Mnisi, are not good enough. But the Europeans and the Americans are good enough. We are willing to give them 100,000 on the spot. But you come to me, you say, David, I want to dress, but I want to spend 5,000. The level of disrespect.
There is still a lot of colonial brainwashing where we've been taught that anything that is Western is modern, it's beautiful, it's classy, and everything that is African is backwards. That mentality still remains to this day, even though we can see and we know that that is not true. The other thing with African fashion, it has gotten a bit better, but it's still there. There is a lack of aspirational branding when it comes to African fashion. So when you think of somebody who has money, you automatically associate brands like your Louis Vuitton, your Gucci, your Christian Louboutin. You never associate it with your African designers. Your Tebe Magugu, I'm pronouncing this well, your Lisa Folawayo, your Kenneth Eze, your Imani Aisi. Another thing that will be the death of us is peer pressure and perception. I don't know if it's the same in Africa, but I know in South Africa, it is the ones with the symbols. Your Gucci, 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 Gucci. They are seen as you know, you need to be rich in order to show that you are rich. You need to have the extravagant Versace shirt, you know, the one that actually shows you that this is a Versace shirt, and you need to have the Gucci shirt with the print all over the place. I mean, can we outgrow this? Can it be, you know, I've noticed also of late, which I'm proud of, you know, your Rich Mnisi now has become, you know, your new Gucci. It's not as big, but you can see that, okay, somebody is, you know, showing off that they're wearing a Rich Mnisi or they're wearing a Maxhosa, you know, something that is iconic. Another thing we suffer from that we also need to get out of is the event wear mentality, right? You will only go to a designer, you will only go to your hand goods here because you're going to a matric dance, not to find a skirt that you can wear to work. So we need to get out of that also. The fact that we only want designer wear or special wear, as we would call it, your Sunday best, only, during those special events and during special times. Let it be part of what we wear on a daily basis when we're going to work, when we go into the shops. While we struggle to afford our own culture, the world is profiting from it. I mean, we are seeing African print, beadwork, everything on the runway, and no attribution from the designers. A problem that we're seeing more and more is Western brands profiting off African aesthetics. So they're profiting off of African aesthetics without hiring any African people, without acknowledging the culture that it comes from. We all know where they come from. We are not getting any royalties from them basically appropriating our culture, because our culture is also not protected legally. I think it's something we need to look into, protecting our culture legally. Our designers, our African designers, are supposed to be benefiting from this. Western institutions dictate what is stylish African. It's getting this point. So what do we do? Change is possible, but it has to be intentional. The one way is to revive our once thriving textile industries, and the way to do that is through government policy. I know, but it is one of the ways, it is one of the major ways that we can revive this industry. I mean, reviving this industry would also alleviate some of the governmental or the problems that we are having in our countries of unemployment, of high levels of poverty. The government needs to subsidize this industry. They need to have initiatives to try and protect this industry in order for it to come back to life. Other way is to work through collaborative methods. So designers can team up with corporations to share a space, equipment, staff in order to increase the input and make sure that things are locally made. So we can have the designs and have the factories, but we still need to re-educate consumers. Teach it in schools, teach people the value of keeping a homegrown industry. Teaching them that it is not only things that come from the West that are of high quality, but we produce the best. Another way is to have more creative business models. I mean, what worked yesterday is not always something that works today too. One thing for sure is that we are good at what we do. We are good at anything that we do. But one thing we are absolutely exceptionally good at is fashion. And the ultimate dream or the ultimate thing would be for you to, as an African, be able to walk into an African designer store and pick up a few things that you're going to wear to work. Let us be able to recognize that, this is this designer, this is that designer up there. We just need to believe in ourselves enough. And that is all. That is definitely all it takes for us to start believing in ourselves enough, believe in our products, believe in our IP, protect our IP, protect our industries. And I can see it coming. I just hope it happens in my lifetime. So that is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it. Please let me know who is your favorite African designer. Maybe I will deep dive into some African designers. So just leave your comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe. Press the button below. Click like, share, and join us next time when we break it down one crazy thing at a time. Bye guys.